Western science has been our god. In the variety of its power, it has preserved, comforted, healed, warmed, fed, and entertained us, and we have felt free to criticize and occasionally reject it, as men have always rejected their gods. But in the knowledge that, despite our apostasy, this deity, our creature and our slave, would still provide for us the anesthetic for the pain, the spare heart, the new lung, the antibiotic, the moving wheels, and the moving pictures. The light will always come on, and when we press the switch and it doesn't, we can find out why. I can clearly remember the confident words of one biologist spoken when it had finally become apparent that nowhere in the world was there a pregnant woman. It may take us some time to discover the cause of this apparent universal infertility. We've had 25 years, and we no longer even expect to succeed. In today's video, we're going to look at the uniquely dystopian future of the children of men. Hey guys, this is Justin. Hello, and welcome to the Eckhart's Ladder Book Club, a place where we discuss science fiction and fantasy, and where you can have your input. By joining the Patreon down below, you can not only vote on what books we read together next, but also share your thoughts and impact the discussion we have here on the channel. Today, as mentioned, we will be discussing Children of Men, and you're most likely familiar with Children of Men from the 2006 film adaptation. In 2 decades since its release, the film has been celebrated as a modern classic of the sci-fi genre, focusing on a story set within a world facing the threat of extinction following a worldwide epidemic of infertility. This is an intriguing premise, and funny enough, the only major commonality between the film and its source material, the 1992 P.D. James novel, The Children of Men. You know the story if you've seen what they do to Philip K. Dick's adaptations, for example. The film is a much more streamlined and action-packed adaptation of P.D. James's story, differing in themes, characters, and overall plot. We're going to start with a discussion of the book because it does provide a bit more backstory and world building, which I know you guys are all about. The novel begins in 2021 and follows 50-year-old historian Dr. Theo Ferran, who begins journaling and following the death of the last born human. In 1995, or as the world refers to it, the year Omega, all human sperm mysteriously became sterile, with the last group of humans born known as the Omegas. The nations of the world worked together to find a cure for the infertility, but over time, their failure led to conflict and an eventual loss of hope. The world has thus become a colder and much more selfish place. People treat pets or dolls in the same way they would have treated children. The Omegas have become entitled celebrities, with youth becoming the most desired attribute among an increasingly aging population. A lack of care for the future of Earth has led to a tyrannical British government, with our protagonist's cousin Zan serving as the Warden of England for the last 15 years. Zan and his council appeal to the population by promising them protection and lives of ease, fulfillment, and pleasure. The new laws dictated by the Council of England decree that citizens must routinely be tested for potential fertility and learn valuable skills to maintain society as the population continues to decline. The elderly are considered undesirables, with only the wealthy being treated with the dignity of life in a nursing home. The rest, they're encouraged, and in some instances forced, to take their own lives. All of this is enforced by the State Secret Police, or SSP, whose primary function is to act as the council's army to dispense order throughout England. While society is mostly focused on remaining happy until the end of humanity, laws are still in place to ensure the nation doesn't descend into chaos. Offenders are given a judgment, with most exiled to the island of Man, which, similar to the island of Manhattan in Escape from New York, has become a chaotic land ruled by gangs of criminals with no possibility of escape or release. Many of the Omegas are prone to committing crimes and have a more violent nature due to the state of the world they were raised in and the narcissism that came packaged with a feeling of superiority to non-Omegas. This draw to violence leads to the inciting incident of the novel when Joseph Ricardo, the last Omega born, is killed in a pub brawl at 25 years old. Our protagonist Theo writes his thoughts on the event as he fills the reader in on his life and how the Omega year changes everything. And this, by the way, is where the differences between the film and the novel become much more apparent, with the film repurposing and recontextualizing characters and events to make the plot flow more naturally. As mentioned in the novel version, Theo is a professor of history and formerly an advisor to his cousin, the now dictator of England, Zan. He grew up alongside Zan, and despite the innocent years being the happiest of his life, Theo recalls an inability to understand Zan, who becomes obsessed with his own self-sufficiency, something Theo unknowingly relates to due to the death of his father at an early age and feeling emotional distance with his mother, who attempted to shield him from the burden of his father's illness. Theo felt unable to love, and by the time he reached adulthood, he married a woman he never loved, and shortly before the Omega year, accidentally ran over and killed their daughter. Theo, a hopeless and loveless character from his earliest memories, now inhabits a world that reflects his internal struggle. His only way to cope through the inevitable downfall of humanity is to maintain his routine, despite how pointless teaching history to a final generation may be. He soon is approached by a former student named Julian, and unwillingly becomes involved with a protest group known as the Five Fishes. They want Theo to persuade Zan and the council to return the state of the government to a democracy. Theo is apprehensive, believing his cousin and the council will not listen, but after witnessing a mass suicide and then denial of its existence by other citizens, reconsiders. The council denies any wrongdoing on the nation's part and is warned by Zan to stop questioning those in power. Theo tries to dissuade Julian from continuing to fight the government, but she is firm in her beliefs that people deserve more than the authoritarian government they've allowed to rule in the twilight years of humanity. The Five Fishes represent the final hope that humanity has for real change, and not just in a political sense. Julian approaches Theo following a church service which they both attend. Theo still attends church in an attempt to maintain a sense of normalcy despite having no faith in religion or the world itself. The Five Fishes and Julian specifically represent a blossoming spiritual faith growing within Theo. His reluctance to get involved with the Five Fishes reflects that of society, blindly accepting their fate as the last of a dying species. This ties in with the quote I opened the video with. In the 20th century, the advancements of Western medicine and self-preservation took precedence over theology. This doesn't inherently write off the advancements of medicine or need to align with a specific religion, but the novel makes it very clear that having faith in something greater than humanity is the arbiter that can save the world. And don't worry, the Christ-like analogies will continue. As Theo continues to have his eyes open to the horrors of the world by the Five Fishes and their messages spread, his faith in humanity also begins to return, coinciding with the revelation that Julian is pregnant and Theo is the father. Humanity's salvation is not solely in science or the government, but instead in our faith in something greater than ourselves. This is one of the main thematic differences from the movie. The film almost entirely removes the religious angle and focuses more on the societal and political struggle the world is facing. The timeline is also moved forward, with the Omega year changing to 2009. Halo 3 is fine then. In the narrative beginning in 2027, Theo in the film isn't a professor, but instead a former political activist turned government employee. The world is already in a state of political unrest, with the Fishes acting as a terrorist group fighting back against the oppressive government. Julian is altered to be Theo's ex-wife rather than a former student, with the death of their daughter to a flu prior to the Omega year accounting for their relationship falling apart. The world of the film is similar to the novel, but there's a stronger focus on the treatment of refugees in a broken England. The oppression isn't as masked from the public as it is in the novel, with signs demanding to report all refugees littered all over the city streets. Hard to imagine. The streets of London are an active war zone, with people treating acts of violence and destruction as a commonality. The film goes for a more grounded story and contemporary approach to the handling of the themes. Theo and Julian's connection to their faith in God is no longer the catalyst for what fixes the world. This comes with Key, an 18-year-old pregnant refugee whose baby the Fishes plan to use as a political tool to push back against the oppressive government, against, by the way, Key's wishes. The film is more ambiguous by design. The director, Alfonso Cuarón, made the decision not to read the novel because he didn't want to lead the audience to have all the same conclusion. The Fishes are painted as just as ruthless and selfish as the oppressive government they're fighting against. Similarly, the miraculous pregnancy is no longer linked to our protagonist's renewed belief in faith, but instead the pregnancy and eventual birth of the first child in nearly 2 decades remains a mystery. It reframes the story from being resolved through divine salvation and instead focuses on the people, especially those who are worse off in the new world and how they're struggling to survive in the face of societal collapse. The novel builds to a conflict between the SSP and the Five Fishes, eventually resulting in a showdown between Theo and Zan. It all ends with Theo assuming his new place as the new figure of power and head of the United Kingdom, attained through his belief in God and the promises that he will lead humanity back from the brink of extinction. The film, on the other hand, sees Theo regaining his humanity following his brush with nihilism, something reflected in the society he belongs to. This all changes after Theo finds a sense of purpose in helping to ensure the safety of Key and her baby, ultimately sacrificing himself to bring about the promise of a new tomorrow. A new day not only for Key and her daughter, but hopefully for humanity as a whole. Whether or not that's true isn't explicitly stated. You're meant to draw your own conclusion. Theo's quest is one of hope. The pregnancy of Key instills that hope in him and everybody else who meets and sees the baby. Whether that hope is one founded in religion or science really all depends on the individual. I really love this story because it's such a unique look at the extinction of humanity. One that's not reliant on an uninhabitable environment, but instead looks at what will give humanity the drive to continue living even in the face of inevitable demise. It's almost a counter to The Road, which we looked at recently, an apocalyptic story that is centered on reality and the hope that even in the darkest and most bleak circumstances, hope can be found. This is something that can be seen in either version of Children of Men, whether you're talking about the spiritual message of the P.D. James novel or the more introspective lesson about humanity in the film. And just to wrap up, this reminded me of another novel we actually discussed on the channel, and that is Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke. Spoiler alert for that novel. I haven't warned you yet, so, this is the big reveal. In Childhood's End, a species known as the Overlords take humanity's children in an effort to join a greater cosmic intelligence. Not only are all children taken from Earth, but humanity no longer bears children, and the novel very briefly towards the end explores how the remaining people deal with such a thing, although it's in no way the focus as we get here. Anyway, some really great novels for you guys to dig into and some more videos as well. If you enjoyed this, please consider supporting the channel over on Patreon. These videos are extremely hit and miss, and just a little bit of support makes this that much more stable for me. On screen right now, you've got a link to the Childhood's End video and the video we did for The Road. Both I think are great, but I look forward to reading your thoughts down below. See you next time. Bye-bye.